Tomorrow we start our next 3-month session, and I was reading an article from the Baltimore Sun 2 days ago. It was Maryland lawmakers facing budget gap and political warfare. Political warfare. Quote, it's not going to be pretty. Gear up, get your feet dirty, get in the game, and run. There's a lot of squabbling in the Maryland General Assembly, and we have to think about why this is, why we're not making progress. We hear all the time, Congress can't get anything done. It's at a standstill. Local government can't get anything done. It's at a standstill. And we have to think about why that is. And one of my main platforms is the importance of term limits. I think that looking at the crawling pace at which the Democrats and the Republicans within the General Assembly are actually finding common ground and being able to build bridges, it's important that we look at this and say, instead of squabbling over the same things, what is the reason for this? And one of the reasons is, in order to get anything done, Democrats have to be willing to bend. Republicans have to be willing to bend. But the fact is, nobody wants to bend, right? Because they're worried about re-election. They're worrying about everything but what's in the best interest of people. And this is why term limits are so important. I think it's a topic that we don't talk enough about. See, Congress and our state legislatures are heavily entrenched in partisan politics, right? And so they end up with this gridlock when they're trying to pass legislation. And this makes sense. But if we enact term limits, what folks who are in representative positions realize is that the legislation that they're, proposing and, trying to pass and supporting or blocking for their constituents, they're going to be the constituents for whom they're working in an amount of time. And that's not always the case right now. They're heavily influenced by money, by crony capitalism, by lobbyists, by corporations, far more so than they're influenced by the actual people who they are working, on this legislation for. I think that state legislature and Congress and all levels of, locally as well as nationally, a legislature would have an easier time passing legislation and would probably make a more positive difference for the people of the nation if they had limits on the amount of time that they were in. Our founding fathers knew that if you give people enough power for too long a time, eventually it will be corrupted. And I think we see that, and we see, this kind of stall in progress in local government. And, hey, look, it made the headlines of Baltimore Sun the past 2 days with the session starting up tomorrow. And I just think that that's so important that we get that out there. When they ended their session last year, there was a possibility of modest tax cuts, bipartisan tax cuts being discussed this year because I think they were a bit over budget. Well, why are we talking about modest tax cuts? I have to ask people, have you looked at the budget and where the money is allotted? Do you know the size of the budget? I know when I started into the game, I didn't know. I'm learning as I go. Why aren't we considering options to privatize? Come up with, affordable privatized sex or education. Khan Academy, you've talked about Coursera. It seems to me that it would be much more prudent to put out there, testing that actually test for aptitude and understanding, not sending our kids to school to learn how to pass a test to a set standard. The most important thing, though, is to take that next step, and it's just vital in 2018, to take that next step, to get out there and to speak to everyone. I want us to stop banging our heads and shaking our heads and sitting back and going, the problems, and let's start working toward creative, innovative solutions. They're out there. Seize the opportunities. You have these individuals who, sure, they go up for re-election. I understand all that, but frequently they run uncontested, and they have no term limits. Congress has no term limits. You have congressmen in there 35, 40 years. It leaves you open to people in positions of legislative representation of the people who are so far removed from the everyday people.